He fell in love with a poor girl who did not notice him. But the day she finally looked into his eyes, everything he had secretly done for her over the last 3 years was on the verge of being exposed. Lucas Sterling was wealthy, successful, and admired by everyone in the city, but the only person whose attention he wanted was Hannah Brooks, a poor girl struggling to survive while working multiple jobs, caring for her elderly grandmother, and chasing a college degree she could barely afford. Every morning he watched her. Every day he worried about her. Every year he loved her more. But while Lucas knew almost everything about Hannah's hardships, Hannah did not even know his name. She walked past him countless times. She thanked strangers he secretly paid to help her. She celebrated opportunities he quietly created for her. And she cried through battles he desperately wanted to fight beside her. But Hannah never noticed him. Then one unexpected day changed everything. A shocking hospital emergency, a dangerous secret surrounding Hannah's future, and a heartbreaking discovery would force their worlds to collide in a way neither of them could have imagined. But when Hannah finally learns the truth about the mysterious man who has been silently protecting her, will she see the love that has been standing in front of her all along? And why did a rich man spend 3 years loving a poor girl from the shadows, instead of simply introducing himself? More importantly, what secret from Lucas's past made him believe that loving Hannah openly could destroy them both? Every morning at exactly 7:15, Lucas Sterling sat beside the same window inside Harbor Street Coffee. The coffee shop overlooked the entrance to Lincoln Community College. Most customers thought he liked the view. Only Lucas knew the truth. His eyes never drifted toward the college building. They searched for one person. And right on schedule, she appeared. Hannah Brooks hurried across the street with a stack of textbooks pressed against her chest. The edges of the books were worn. The backpack hanging from her shoulder had been repaired so many times that different shades of thread crossed its fabric like scars. Yet she carried herself with quiet determination. She looked exhausted, not because she was lazy, because life never gave her a chance to rest. "Here comes your girl again," the waitress teased as she placed a coffee on Lucas's table. Lucas smiled faintly. "She's not my girl. Maybe not yet." If only it were that simple. Outside, Hannah checked the time and quickened her pace. She had already been awake for 4 hours. Before sunrise, she cleaned offices downtown. After classes, she would work at a diner until nearly midnight. Then she would study before sleeping a few hours and doing it all over again. Most people would have given up. Hannah never did. Lucas watched her disappear through the college gates. The familiar ache returned to his chest. 3 years. 3 entire years. 3 years since he first saw her. 3 years since a single moment changed everything. His fingers tightened around the coffee cup as the memory resurfaced. Back then, Lucas had not been the confident businessman everyone admired today. His company had recently survived a near collapse. The pressure had been crushing. His father had died months earlier after a long illness. The grief left wounds success could not heal. One afternoon, while sitting near a crowded bus station, Lucas noticed a young woman opening a paper lunch bag. She looked hungry, really hungry. Then an elderly, homeless man approached her. Without hesitation, she handed him her meal. "You need it more than I do," she told him. The old man tried to refuse. She smiled anyway. Lucas never forgot that smile. It wasn't the smile of someone who had everything. It was the smile of someone who had almost nothing but still chose kindness. That young woman was Hannah. The memory had followed him for years. Even now. Even here. What Lucas didn't know was that another memory haunted him too. A much darker one. One that explained why he never approached Hannah. Why he remained hidden. Why he loved her from a distance. And why every time he thought about introducing himself, fear whispered that history might repeat itself. Across campus, Hannah entered her classroom completely unaware that the richest man in the city had once built entire mornings around seeing her for less than 60 seconds. And hidden inside her old backpack was a document she had not yet read carefully. A document connected to her late grandfather. A document that would soon attract dangerous attention. A document capable of changing both their lives forever. The document remained buried inside Hannah's backpack all day. She had received it from her grandmother that morning and barely glanced at it before rushing to class. To Hannah, it looked like another stack of boring paperwork. To someone else, it would have looked very different. Because hidden among those pages was a property record connected to land her late grandfather had purchased decades earlier. Land nobody in the family had thought about for years. Land that would soon become the center of everything. But Hannah knew none of that. At lunchtime, she sat alone beneath a large oak tree near the college library, reviewing lecture notes while eating a simple peanut butter sandwich. Her phone buzzed. A text from her grandmother. "Don't forget to pick up my medicine after work. Love you." A smile appeared on Hannah's face. No matter how difficult life became, her grandmother always found a way to make her feel loved. The message pulled her into a familiar memory. Years earlier, after Hannah's parents died in a highway accident, she had become an orphan overnight. She was only 12. The world she knew disappeared in a single afternoon. Many relatives offered sympathy. Few offered help. Only her grandmother, Rose Brooks, stepped forward. Despite living on a small pension and struggling with arthritis, Rose opened her tiny apartment and raised Hannah as her own daughter. The years that followed were filled with sacrifices. Rose often skipped meals so Hannah could eat. She secretly mended old clothes instead of buying new ones. When Hannah earned a place in college, Rose cried for an hour because she feared they couldn't afford it. Those sacrifices became the foundation of Hannah's determination. She wasn't studying for herself. She was studying for the woman who had given up everything for her. Across town, Lucas Sterling stood inside the top-floor conference room of Sterling Innovations. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Executives waited around a polished table worth more than most cars. A multi-million-dollar acquisition was being finalized. Yet Lucas wasn't paying attention. His thoughts were elsewhere. "Lucas." His assistant, Naomi, cleared her throat. "The board is waiting for your decision." Lucas blinked. "Approve it." The executives exchanged amused glances. Even they had noticed his recent distraction. As the meeting ended, Naomi followed him into his office. "You were thinking about her again." Lucas sighed. Naomi had worked with him for 7 years. She was one of the few people who knew about Hannah. "Was I that obvious? You approved a $30 million acquisition without asking a single question." Lucas laughed softly. "Then yes." Naomi studied him carefully. "Why don't you just talk to her?" The question immediately erased his smile. For a moment, an old wound reopened. A wound he rarely allowed himself to revisit. But the memory arrived anyway. 5 years earlier, Lucas had been deeply in love with a woman named Victoria Lane. Back then, his company was still struggling. Investors were pulling out. Bills were piling up. One evening, after months of promising to stand beside him, Victoria ended their relationship. Her words had carved themselves into his memory. "I thought you were going to be successful." Lucas remembered staring at her. Confused. Heartbroken. "You said you loved me." Victoria's expression never changed. "I loved what I thought you would become." 2 weeks later, she was dating a wealthy investor. The betrayal shattered something inside him. Even after his company became successful, fear remained. Every relationship afterward felt suspicious. Every compliment felt uncertain. Every smile carried questions. Did they love him? Or his money? Then Hannah appeared. She never chased wealth, never sought attention, never even noticed him. Ironically, that was exactly why he trusted her. Yet the same fear that drew him toward her also kept him away. Because if Hannah ever discovered who he really was, would she still see him the same way? Or would history repeat itself? As evening approached, Hannah finished classes and headed toward the diner where she worked, unaware that someone else had begun noticing her. A black sedan sat across the street. Inside, a sharply dressed man watched her through tinted windows. His name was Marcus Reed, and his attention wasn't focused on Hannah herself. It was focused on the old property document he had recently learned was connected to her family. A slow smile spread across his face. For Marcus, Hannah Brooks wasn't a young woman struggling to survive. She was the doorway to something worth millions. And he had already begun making plans. Marcus Reed did not believe in coincidences. Everything in his life was calculated. Every friendship, every business deal, every smile. And now, every step he took toward Hannah Brooks. 3 days after first spotting her outside the diner, Marcus walked through its front doors for the first time. The dinner rush was in full swing. Customers filled nearly every table. Plates clattered. Conversations overlapped. And Hannah moved quickly between tables carrying trays while trying to keep up with endless orders. She looked exhausted, but she still smiled at every customer. Marcus noticed that immediately. Not because he admired kindness, because he understood how trust worked. Kind people were easier to manipulate. He chose a table in Hannah's section. The moment she approached, he offered a warm smile. "Good evening." "Hi," Hannah replied politely. "What can I get for you?" As she wrote down his order, Marcus carefully studied her. There was no greed in her eyes. No ambition for luxury. No interest in expensive things. That matched everything he had learned. And that made his plans slightly more complicated. People who wanted money were easy to influence. People who cared about family were harder. Still, Marcus was patient. Patience had earned him fortunes before. It would work again. After dinner, he left an unusually large tip. Hannah stared at it. There had to be a mistake. She hurried outside just as Marcus reached his car. "Sir." He turned. "You left too much." Marcus laughed. "No, I didn't." Before Hannah could protest, he climbed into his vehicle and drove away. Watching from across the street, Lucas felt something tighten inside his chest. At first glance, the interaction looked harmless. But something about Marcus bothered him. The man's attention seemed too deliberate, too focused. Lucas had spent years studying people in business negotiations. He recognized calculated behavior when he saw it. The feeling stayed with him. And feelings like that rarely appeared without reason. Back at home that night, Hannah sat beside her grandmother, Rose, in their small apartment. The apartment showed signs of decades of struggle. Peeling paint, old furniture, a refrigerator that rattled loudly whenever it turned on. Yet warmth filled every corner. Because love lived there. Rose smiled as Hannah handed her medicine. "Long day." "When isn't it?" Hannah laughed. Rose reached for Hannah's hand. One glance was enough to reveal the fatigue beneath her granddaughter's smile. The sight brought back memories. Years ago, after Hannah's parents died, Rose often woke up in the middle of the night to find the little girl crying quietly beneath her blanket. Not wanting to be a burden. Not wanting anyone to worry. Even as a child, Hannah carried pain silently. That same habit remained today. As they talked, Rose suddenly remembered the document she had given Hannah. "Did you look at those papers?" Hannah groaned. "Not yet." "You should." "Why?" Rose hesitated. A strange expression crossed her face. It belonged to your grandfather. That answer seemed simple. But beneath it hid a story Hannah had never fully heard. A story about land. A story about promises. A story that would soon become impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus sat inside an expensive penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline. Several papers lay spread across his dining table. Property maps, development plans, financial projections. At the center sat a photograph of Hannah. Beside it sat a copy of the Brooks family land records. Marcus picked up a phone. "Are you sure?" he asked. The voice on the other end answered immediately. "The land's value is increasing every month." Marcus smiled. "And she doesn't know." "Not yet." "Good." He ended the call. Then he glanced toward Hannah's photo. For the first time, viewers might notice something important. Marcus never once looked at her the way a man looks at a woman he likes. He looked at her the way an investor looks at an opportunity. A subtle clue. A warning hidden in plain sight. The kind of warning Hannah would completely miss. But Lucas would not. The next morning, Marcus returned to the diner. Then the day after that. And the day after that. Each visit felt harmless. Each conversation felt friendly. Each interaction seemed innocent. Yet unknown to Hannah, every encounter was bringing him closer to his goal. And unknown to Marcus, someone else had already begun watching him. Someone with resources far greater than he realized. Someone who was starting to suspect that Marcus Reed had entered Hannah's life for reasons that had nothing to do with love. The question was no longer whether trouble was coming. The question was how much damage it would cause before the truth finally surfaced. Over the next several weeks, Marcus Reed became a regular part of Hannah Brooks' life. At first, it happened so gradually that Hannah barely noticed. A conversation after work. A shared walk to the bus stop. A cup of coffee waiting for her after a difficult shift. Then came the flowers. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that would alarm her. Marcus was careful. Very careful. He understood that trust wasn't built through grand gestures. It was built through consistency. And consistency was exactly what he gave her. One evening, as Hannah finished her shift, Marcus was waiting outside the diner. "You look exhausted," he said. "I'm exhausted." "Then let me drive you home." "I can take the bus." "I know." His smile remained gentle. "But you don't have to tonight." After a moment of hesitation, Hannah accepted. The drive felt easy. Comfortable. Marcus knew how to listen. He asked about college. About her dreams. About her grandmother. About her childhood. Yet hidden among those innocent questions were others. Questions that seemed harmless at the time. How long has your grandmother lived in the apartment? Does your family own any property? Did your grandfather leave anything behind? Most people wouldn't have noticed the pattern. Hannah certainly didn't. But someone else would have. Across the city, Lucas Sterling sat in his office reviewing a report. The report wasn't related to business. It was related to Marcus. A former colleague from a private security firm had quietly gathered information at Lucas's request. Nothing illegal. Nothing invasive. Just enough to ease a growing concern. The deeper Lucas read, the more uncomfortable he became. Marcus carried significant gambling debt. Several failed investments. Multiple lawsuits settled quietly outside court. No criminal record. But enough warning signs to make Lucas suspicious. His stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. Lucas looked out the window toward the city below. Part of him wanted to ignore it. After all, Hannah wasn't his girlfriend. She wasn't even his friend. But another part of him remembered watching her struggle for 3 years. That part couldn't stay silent. Still, he needed proof. Suspicion alone wasn't enough. Otherwise, he would look exactly like a jealous man trying to sabotage a rival. And Hannah deserved better than that. That evening, another piece of the puzzle appeared. Back in her apartment, Hannah finally opened the property documents her grandmother had mentioned weeks earlier. Several yellowed papers slipped onto the table. Old maps, survey records, ownership certificates. Rose adjusted her glasses and smiled softly. Your grandfather used to talk about that land all the time. Hannah laughed. The empty farmland. Rose nodded. He believed one day it would matter. The statement pulled Rose into a distant memory. Decades earlier, her husband, Walter Brooks, had spent nearly all their savings purchasing a neglected stretch of land outside the city. Friends called him foolish. Family members mocked him. Even Rose questioned the decision. But Walter always said the same thing. One day people will see what I see. For years, nothing happened. Then Walter died unexpectedly before proving himself right. The land remained forgotten. Or so everyone believed. As Hannah studied the paperwork, she noticed something strange. Several recent letters were attached. Letters from developers expressing interest in purchasing nearby properties. Her eyebrows furrowed. Grandma, why are companies interested in land out there? Rose looked surprised. I don't know. But the truth was neither of them fully understood what they possessed. Not yet. Elsewhere, Marcus sat inside a private restaurant meeting with a real estate consultant. The consultant slid a folder across the table. Marcus opened it. His eyes widened. Even he hadn't realized the numbers would be this large. The projected value of the Brooks property had nearly tripled within the last year. And future development plans suggested it would rise even further. Millions. Perhaps even tens of millions. Marcus slowly closed the folder. For the first time, excitement flashed openly across his face. The consultant leaned forward. If that land stays in the family, whoever controls it becomes very wealthy. The word controls lingered in Marcus's mind. Not owns. Controls. A subtle distinction. A dangerous one. Meanwhile, far across town, Lucas received a phone call. His security contact sounded unusually serious. Lucas. What is it? We found something. Lucas straightened immediately. What? A brief silence followed. Then came the answer. Marcus Reed started asking questions about the Brooks family property months before he ever met Hannah. The room suddenly felt colder. Because that wasn't coincidence. That was planning. And if Marcus had targeted Hannah from the beginning, then Lucas feared something much bigger was unfolding. Something Hannah could never see coming. And unless someone stopped it soon, she might be the one who paid the highest price. For the first time in 3 years, Lucas Sterling found himself losing sleep over someone else's decisions. Not because a business deal was failing. Not because investors were pressuring him. Not because his company faced trouble. But because Hannah Brooks was slowly falling for a man he no longer trusted. The realization hit him hardest one Saturday afternoon. He had stopped by Harbor Street Coffee, taking his usual seat near the window, when he saw Hannah walking down the sidewalk. She wasn't alone. Marcus was beside her. And Hannah was smiling. A real smile. The kind Lucas had spent years secretly hoping to be the reason for. For a brief moment, jealousy stabbed through him. Not because Marcus was with her. Because Hannah looked happy. And Lucas couldn't tell whether that happiness was genuine or dangerous. Across the street, Marcus opened a door for Hannah. She laughed at something he said. Then they disappeared into a bookstore together. Lucas stared after them. His coffee had gone cold. Yet he never touched it. A painful memory surfaced without warning. Years earlier, Lucas had watched another woman smile at him exactly the same way. Victoria. Back then, he believed he had found forever. He remembered late-night conversations, shared dreams, promises about the future. Then came the collapse of his first company. Investors withdrew funding. Projects failed. And suddenly, Victoria became distant. Within weeks, she left. Not because he had changed, because his financial future had. The betrayal taught Lucas a lesson he never forgot. Love could be genuine, but appearances could deceive. That lesson was the reason he had spent 3 years hiding his feelings for Hannah. And now it was the reason he couldn't ignore Marcus. Later that evening, Hannah sat across from Marcus at a small restaurant. For the first time in years, life felt lighter. Marcus made her laugh. He listened carefully. He remembered details. He noticed things other people overlooked. At least, that's what Hannah believed. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. Hannah smiled. "Nothing. That's impossible." She laughed softly. "Maybe I'm just enjoying tonight." Marcus returned her smile. But behind his eyes, another thought lingered. The land. The inheritance. The future fortune. Even now, while appearing completely engaged in the conversation, part of his mind remained focused on the Brooks property. A subtle contrast the audience could see. But Hannah could not. As the evening continued, Marcus casually asked another question. "So your grandfather really kept that land all these years?" Hannah nodded. "I guess so. And your grandmother still owns it." "Technically." Marcus took a sip of water. His expression remained calm. Too calm. Another clue. Another warning. Another piece of foreshadowing, quietly falling into place. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas received new information. Naomi entered his office carrying a folder. "You need to see this." Lucas opened it immediately. Inside were financial records connected to Marcus. Several large gambling losses, outstanding private debts, and one especially troubling discovery. 3 months before meeting Hannah, Marcus had attended a closed-door meeting involving developers interested in purchasing property near the Brooks land. Lucas looked up sharply. 3 months before. Naomi nodded. He knew about the property before he knew Hannah. The implication was impossible to ignore. Marcus hadn't stumbled into Hannah's life. He had walked into it deliberately. Lucas leaned back in his chair. His instincts had been right all along. But proving it would be another matter entirely. Because from Hannah's perspective, Marcus appeared perfect. Kind. Reliable. Attentive. Everything Lucas wasn't. At least not openly. That night, Hannah returned home feeling happier than she had in years. Rose noticed immediately. Someone had a good evening. Hannah blushed. "Grandma." Rose smiled knowingly. Yet as she watched her granddaughter, a flicker of concern crossed her face. The concern wasn't about Marcus. Not exactly. It was about something Walter Brooks had once told her decades earlier. A warning she had nearly forgotten. A warning connected to the land. A warning connected to people who suddenly became interested when money appeared. As Rose prepared for bed, she glanced toward an old wooden box hidden inside her closet. Inside were documents, letters, and a secret her late husband had instructed her to protect. A secret that would soon become extremely important. Outside, the city slept peacefully. But invisible threads were tightening around every major character. Hannah was moving closer to Marcus. Lucas was moving closer to the truth. And Rose was moving closer to revealing a secret she had guarded for decades. The problem was that none of them realized how little time remained before everything collided. And when it did, Someone would be forced to choose between love and the truth. The choice between love and truth arrived sooner than anyone expected. It began on a quiet Tuesday evening. Hannah had just finished a long shift at the diner. Her feet ached. Her shoulders felt heavy. And all she wanted was to get home, help her grandmother with dinner, and spend a few hours studying before bed. She never made it that far. Halfway through her bus ride, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. Normally, she would have ignored it. Something made her answer. "Hello." The voice on the other end was urgent. "Is this Hannah Brooks?" "Yes." "This is St. Vincent Medical Center." Her heart immediately tightened. "What's wrong?" "Your grandmother collapsed about 20 minutes ago." The world seemed to stop moving. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. "What happened?" "We need you to come immediately." The call ended. Everything after that became a blur. The bus. The traffic. The hospital entrance. The bright lights. The fear. By the time Hannah reached the emergency department, tears were already running down her face. She rushed to the reception desk. "My grandmother, Rose Brooks." The nurse checked a computer. "They're still evaluating her condition." Still evaluating. Those two words felt terrifying, because they meant nobody knew how serious the situation really was. Hours passed. Doctors came and went. Tests were performed. Questions were asked. Yet no one could give Hannah a clear answer. She sat alone in the hallway, clutching her grandmother's purse. Inside it were familiar things. Reading glasses. Medicine bottles. Family photographs. And a folded letter Hannah had never seen before. She almost opened it. Then stopped. It felt wrong. Not yet. Not while Rose was fighting for her life. Several floors above, doctors reviewed the results. The diagnosis wasn't good. Rose required a specialist. And quickly. Unfortunately, the best specialist in the state was booked for weeks. The delay could become dangerous. Meanwhile, across the city, Lucas Sterling was finishing a late meeting when Naomi entered his office unexpectedly. "Lucas." One look at her expression told him something was wrong. "What happened?" "It's Hannah." His heart instantly dropped. What about Hannah? Her grandmother was rushed to the hospital. Within seconds, Lucas was grabbing his jacket. The meeting no longer mattered. Nothing mattered. Not when Hannah was hurting. 40 minutes later, he arrived at St. Vincent Medical Center. Then he saw her. For the first time in years, there was no distance between them. No coffee shop window. No crowded street. No passing glance. Just Hannah. Alone. Broken. Terrified. She sat in the hallway with tears in her eyes. The sight hit Lucas harder than he expected, because it reminded him of another hospital. Another loss. Years earlier, he had sat in a similar hallway while doctors fought unsuccessfully to save his father. The memory rushed back with painful clarity. The endless waiting. The helplessness. The fear. The silence afterward. Lucas had promised himself he would never forget what that felt like. And now Hannah was living through it. Without thinking, he took a step forward. Then another. Then another. For 3 years, he had remained hidden. For 3 years, fear had kept him silent. But watching her suffer changed something. He couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. Not tonight. As he approached, Hannah looked up. Their eyes met. Confusion appeared immediately. She had seen him before. Many times. Passing faces. Coffee shops. Sidewalks. Background moments. But she couldn't place him. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. Lucas stopped. His heart pounded. This was it. the moment he had imagined countless times. Yet none of those imagined versions looked like this. None involved tears. None involved hospitals. None involved pain. "My name is Lucas Sterling," he said quietly. Hannah frowned slightly. The name sounded familiar. But before she could respond, a doctor suddenly emerged from the emergency unit. His expression was serious. Very serious. "Hannah Brooks." She immediately stood. "Yes." The doctor took a breath. "We found something concerning." Fear flooded her face. Lucas felt it too. Because whatever the doctor was about to say wouldn't just affect Rose. It would change everything. And as Hannah hurried toward the doctor, neither she nor Lucas noticed that someone else had just entered the hospital lobby. Marcus Reed. And the moment he learned Rose Brooks was hospitalized, his first concern wasn't her health. It was whether she had revealed the secret hidden inside the old wooden box before collapsing. Because if she had, his entire plan could be ruined. The doctor's next words shattered what little stability Hannah had left. "We discovered a serious blockage near your grandmother's heart," he explained. "The good news is that we found it in time. The bad news is that the procedure she needs is highly specialized." Hannah's face drained of color. "Can you do it?" The doctor hesitated. That hesitation frightened her more than the diagnosis itself. "We can, but the specialist best qualified for this procedure isn't currently available." The hallway suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavier. For a moment, Hannah thought she might collapse. Rose Brooks was more than a grandmother. She was the woman who had raised her, protected her, sacrificed for her. Losing Rose would feel like losing her parents all over again. The old wound instantly reopened. A vivid flashback surfaced. 12-year-old Hannah sitting in a funeral home. 2 coffins. Too many flowers. Too many people saying they were sorry. Then slowly disappearing from her life afterward. Only one person stayed. Rose. Rose who held her hand. Rose who sat beside her bed during nightmares. Rose who worked herself beyond exhaustion to keep food on the table. That memory tightened around Hannah's heart. She couldn't lose her too. Not now. Not ever. The doctor gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're doing everything we can." Then he left. Hannah remained frozen. For several seconds, she simply stared at the floor. Then the emotional weight finally became too much. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Without thinking, she sat back down. And for the first time, Lucas Sterling moved closer. Not as the successful businessman everyone admired. Not as the wealthy founder of a technology empire. Just as a man who understood grief. Quietly, he sat beside her. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt strangely natural. After a moment, Hannah wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry." Lucas looked surprised. "For what?" "You probably don't even know me, and now you're watching me fall apart." A faint smile appeared on his face. "You'd be surprised." The answer puzzled her. Before she could ask what he meant, Lucas added softly, "I lost my father in a hospital." The confession surprised even him. He rarely discussed that period of his life. But something about Hannah made honesty feel easier. The words created an unexpected connection between them. Not romance. Not yet. Something deeper. Understanding. For the next hour they talked quietly. About fear. About family. About loss. For the first time, Hannah noticed something unusual. Lucas listened. Really listened. Most people waited for their turn to speak. Lucas seemed genuinely interested in every word. It felt comforting. Familiar. Safe. Meanwhile, several floors above them, a nurse entered Rose's room. The elderly woman had regained consciousness. Weakly, she opened her eyes. Fragments of memory returned. The collapse. The ambulance. The pain. Then suddenly, another memory surfaced. Walter. Her late husband. The wooden box. The documents. And the promise she made decades earlier. A promise she had almost failed to keep. Panic flickered across her face. She reached toward the bedside table. Phone. The nurse leaned closer. What? My phone. A few minutes later, Rose dialed a number from memory. Not Hannah's. Not a relative's. A lawyer's. When the man answered, Rose spoke only one sentence. It's time. Then she ended the call. Far below, another person was growing increasingly nervous. Marcus Reed stood in the hospital parking garage, staring at his phone. Repeated calls to one of his property contacts had finally produced an answer. And the information wasn't good. Very little about Walter Brooks' original land purchase had ever been made public. Several documents remained sealed. Private. Protected. Which meant there were pieces of the puzzle Marcus still didn't possess. And that bothered him. Because Marcus hated uncertainty. Especially when millions of dollars were involved. As he stood there thinking, another realization struck him. If Rose believed her health was declining, she might start revealing family secrets. Secrets Marcus desperately needed to discover before anyone else. For the first time since beginning his plan, genuine worry crossed his face. Back inside the hospital, Hannah's phone suddenly buzzed. A text message appeared. Unknown number. Her heart skipped. She opened it. The message contained only 7 words. Your grandfather was right about everything. Nothing else. No name. No explanation. No context. Just 7 mysterious words. Hannah stared at the screen. Confused. Uneasy. And completely unaware that this single message was about to unlock a decades-old secret that connected her family, the land, and the reason powerful people had suddenly become interested in her life. The mystery had begun. And the truth was far bigger than anyone imagined. Hannah barely slept that night. The mysterious text message kept replaying in her mind. Your grandfather was right about everything. No explanation. No signature. No clue about who sent it. Yet the words refused to leave her thoughts. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw them again. By sunrise, exhaustion had settled over her. But worry for Rose was stronger. Before heading to class or work, she returned to St. Vincent Medical Center. The moment she entered her grandmother's room, she noticed something different. Rose looked weak, but her eyes seemed sharper, more determined, almost as if she had made an important decision. Hannah. Rose reached for her hand. We need to talk. The seriousness in her voice immediately raised alarm. Grandma, don't scare me. Rose managed a faint smile. I'm not dying. The attempt at humor failed. Neither of them laughed. Instead, Rose glanced toward the closed door. Then lowered her voice. There are things your grandfather wanted you to know. Hannah's heart skipped. The mysterious text instantly came back to her mind. Rose slowly explained. Decades earlier, Walter Brooks had purchased the land for a reason nobody understood. At the time, experts believed the area would never develop. Businesses ignored it. Investors laughed at it. Even friends questioned his judgment. But Walter saw something others didn't. A future transportation corridor. A future expansion route for the city. And eventually, a future commercial hub. He spent years researching it, Rose said softly. How did he know? He paid attention when nobody else did. A flashback unfolded in Hannah's mind through Rose's words. Walter sitting at the kitchen table late at night. Maps spread across every surface. newspaper clippings pinned to walls, notes scribbled in notebooks. Everyone thought he was obsessed. Everyone thought he was wasting time. But Walter never stopped believing. Then Rose's expression changed. There was something else. Hannah leaned forward. What? Before Rose could answer, a knock interrupted them. A lawyer entered the room. An older man carrying a leather briefcase. Rose nodded toward him. This is Richard Keller. The lawyer greeted Hannah politely, then opened the briefcase. Inside sat a thick envelope and a sealed letter. The sight immediately made Hannah nervous. What is this? Richard looked toward Rose. She gave a small nod. The lawyer turned back to Hannah. Your grandfather instructed me to deliver this only under specific circumstances. The room fell silent. Even Hannah's breathing slowed. A major piece of the mystery was finally moving into place. Meanwhile, several floors away, Lucas was having a very different conversation. One of the state's leading cardiac specialists had just entered a private conference room. The doctor extended his hand. Mr. Sterling. Lucas shook it. Thank you for coming. Normally, securing a consultation with someone of this caliber would take weeks. But Lucas had quietly leveraged years of professional connections. Not for himself. For Rose. Just as he had anonymously helped Hannah before. The specialist reviewed the case carefully. Then nodded. I can perform the procedure. Relief washed through Lucas. For the first time in days, he felt hope. The doctor paused. Your family. Lucas glanced toward the hallway where Hannah waited unaware. No. The answer was simple, but it carried 3 years of hidden feelings. 3 years of sacrifices made from the shadows. 3 years of loving someone who didn't know he existed. Elsewhere in the hospital, Marcus Reed was becoming increasingly desperate. His sources had failed. His investigators had failed. And now Rose's hospitalization threatened to speed up events beyond his control. For the first time since targeting Hannah, he decided patience was no longer enough. That afternoon, he visited the Brooks apartment while Hannah remained at the hospital. Using a spare key Hannah had once trusted him with for emergencies, he entered. The apartment was quiet. Marcus moved carefully, searching. Drawers, cabinets, shelves. Nothing. Then his attention landed on the closet. And inside the closet sat an old wooden box. The exact box Rose had protected for decades. Marcus froze. Instinct told him he had found what he was looking for. Slowly he reached toward it. But before he could open it, a voice behind him spoke. What are you doing? Marcus spun around. Standing in the doorway was the apartment's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Parker. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. For several tense seconds, nobody spoke. Then Marcus forced a smile. I'm helping Hannah. The lie sounded smooth. But something in Mrs. Parker's expression suggested she wasn't convinced. And for the first time, Marcus realized someone might have just witnessed something he couldn't explain. Back at the hospital, Hannah carefully opened her grandfather's sealed letter. The first sentence made her blood run cold. To my granddaughter, if you are reading this, someone may already be trying to take our land from you. The words blurred as her hands began to tremble. Because suddenly the text message, the property interest, the strange questions people had been asking. None of it felt like coincidence anymore. And deep down, Hannah sensed she was standing at the edge of a truth that could change everything she thought she knew. The moment Hannah finished reading the first line of her grandfather's letter, a chill ran through her body. If you are reading this, someone may already be trying to take our land from you. The sentence felt impossible, almost paranoid. Yet as she continued reading, every strange event from the past few months began resurfacing in her mind. Marcus's questions. The developer's letters. The mysterious text message. The sudden interest in property her family had ignored for decades. And for the first time, those events started connecting together. Walter Brooks' handwriting filled every page. Steady. Precise. Determined. The letter explained how he had spent years studying city expansion plans, transportation routes, and future commercial development. Most people had dismissed his predictions. But he had been right. So right that he feared one day powerful people would attempt to acquire the land before the family understood its true value. That fear eventually led him to create legal protections. Hidden protections. Safeguards designed to prevent manipulation. As Hannah read further, one sentence stood out. If anyone pressures you to sell quickly, trust them least. Her stomach tightened. Marcus immediately came to mind. The timing couldn't be ignored. The questions. The curiosity. The constant interest in the property. Suddenly, everything felt different. And far more dangerous. Across town, Mrs. Parker sat in her apartment staring at her phone. The image she had captured earlier remained on the screen. Marcus standing inside Hannah's apartment. Near the wooden box. Searching. Not helping. Searching. The elderly woman trusted her instincts. And her instincts told her something wasn't right. After several moments of hesitation, she sent the photo directly to Hannah. Then she added a simple message. I thought you should see this. Back at the hospital, Hannah's phone vibrated. The moment she opened the image, her heart nearly stopped. Marcus. Inside her apartment. Looking directly at the closet, containing her grandfather's documents. Confusion instantly turned into alarm. Her mind raced. Why would Marcus be there? Why hadn't he told her? Why was he searching through private belongings? The questions multiplied rapidly. Then another memory surfaced. A recent dinner conversation. Marcus asking whether Rose still controlled the land. Marcus asking whether there were additional family documents. Marcus asking if Hannah planned to sell. At the time, those questions seemed harmless. Now they felt completely different. Like puzzle pieces finally locking together. Elsewhere, Marcus sat in his car reviewing recent developments. The situation was deteriorating faster than expected. Rose had involved a lawyer. Unknown documents had surfaced. And now Hannah was becoming harder to predict. His phone rang. One of his contacts. We have a problem. Marcus frowned. What now? The Brooks land is worth even more than we estimated. The amount mentioned next made even Marcus blink. The projected value had reached levels that could transform multiple generations. For a brief moment, greed completely consumed him. And that greed would soon become his biggest mistake. Meanwhile, another truth was preparing to surface. Lucas had spent most of the day coordinating Rose's medical treatment. The specialist he secured had officially accepted the case. The surgery would move forward. The chances of success had improved dramatically. Yet Hannah still knew nothing. Lucas preferred it that way. He had never helped her for recognition. Never expected gratitude. Never wanted repayment. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Late that evening, Hannah visited the hospital billing office regarding her grandmother's treatment. The clerk reviewed the account. Then smiled. Everything appears to be covered. Hannah looked confused. Covered by who? The clerk checked the file. Then paused. Oh. What? The clerk realized she may have revealed something unintentionally. Mr. Sterling. Hannah froze. Lucas Sterling. The clerk nodded. The room suddenly felt silent. For several seconds, Hannah simply stared. Surely there had to be some mistake. Why would Lucas do that? They barely knew each other. The question followed her all the way back to Rose's room. And there, another answer was waiting. Rose smiled knowingly when Hannah mentioned Lucas. That young man. You know him? Rose nodded slowly. A little. Hannah's eyes widened. What does that mean? Rose reached for her hand, then revealed something that left Hannah speechless. He's been helping you for years. The words landed like thunder. Years. Not days. Not weeks. Years. Rose explained how anonymous scholarship assistants had appeared when Hannah nearly dropped out of college. How unexpected support arrived whenever a financial crisis threatened her education. How opportunities seemed to emerge at exactly the right moment. Rose had never known every detail, but over time, she had quietly connected enough clues. And every trail eventually led back to Lucas Sterling. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. Because unlike Marcus, Lucas had never asked for anything. Never demanded attention. Never sought credit. He simply helped. From a distance. Without being seen. The contrast between the two men suddenly became impossible to ignore. One entered her life asking questions. The other entered her life solving problems. One seemed interested in what she owned. The other seemed interested in protecting what she loved. And for the first time, Hannah began looking at Lucas differently. Not as a stranger. Not as a successful businessman. But as a man whose actions spoke louder than words. The realization was overwhelming. Yet before she could fully process it, another message arrived on her phone. This one contained information far more shocking. A financial report. A list of debts. Evidence connecting Marcus to developers interested in the Brooks property. And at the bottom sat a single sentence. Marcus knew about your land before he ever met you. Hannah stared at the screen. Her hands trembled. Her heart broke. Because deep down, she already knew what the evidence meant. The man she had started trusting might never have loved her at all. And the confrontation that would expose everything was now unavoidable. Hannah Brooks spent the entire night staring at the evidence. The photo from Mrs. Parker. The financial records. The developer connections. The report showing Marcus had researched the Brooks property months before meeting her. And perhaps most painful of all, the growing realization that Lucas Sterling had quietly protected her for years without asking for anything in return. By sunrise, one truth had become impossible to ignore. Someone had entered her life because of what she owned. Someone else had entered her life because of who she was. The difference changed everything. That afternoon, Hannah asked Marcus to meet her at the small riverside park where they had shared several conversations over the past few months. Marcus arrived smiling. Confident. Certain he still controlled the situation. Hannah. He stepped forward, but something immediately felt wrong. The warmth usually present in her eyes was gone. She stood silently holding a folder. Marcus felt a flicker of unease. What's wrong? Hannah slowly opened the folder. The first photograph appeared. Marcus inside her apartment. Near the wooden box. His smile vanished. Then came the financial records. The property reports. The evidence connecting him to the developers. Each document struck harder than the last. Finally, Hannah looked directly into his eyes. Did you know about my family's land before you met me? Marcus froze. The question itself told him everything. She knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough. For several seconds, he searched for another lie. Another excuse. Another way out. Then he realized there wasn't one. The silence became his answer. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. Not because she loved him, but because she had trusted him. And trust, once broken, hurt differently. It was all about the land, wasn't it? Marcus looked away. That tiny movement confirmed everything. The relationship ended right there. Not with shouting. Not with drama. Just disappointment. A far deeper wound. As Hannah walked away, Marcus called after her. "Hannah, wait." She never stopped walking. Because for the first time, she could see him clearly. And what she saw wasn't love. It was greed. Meanwhile, at St. Vincent Medical Center, Rose Brooks' surgery was underway. Hours passed. Each minute felt longer than the last. Hannah sat in the waiting area. Lucas sat nearby. Neither spoke much. Words weren't necessary. The silence between them felt comfortable now. Natural. Like something that had existed for years, without either of them realizing it. Finally, the surgeon emerged. Everyone stood. The doctor's expression immediately revealed the answer. It was successful. Relief exploded through Hannah. Tears streamed down her face. She covered her mouth. For the first time in days, she could breathe. Rose was going to live. As the emotional weight crashed over her, Hannah instinctively turned toward Lucas. And before thinking, she hugged him. The embrace lasted only seconds. But for Lucas, it felt like time stopped. 3 years. 3 years of watching. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of loving her silently. And now, for the first time, she was standing beside him. Not because of money. Not because of success. Because she wanted to. Later that evening, Rose finally revealed the last piece of Walter Brooks' secret. The legal protections Walter had established decades earlier prevented anyone from manipulating ownership of the land. No opportunistic marriage. No hidden contracts. No pressure tactics. The property would remain fully protected. Walter had anticipated everything. Even from beyond the grave, he had protected his family. And just as he predicted, the land's value eventually transformed Hannah's financial future. But strangely, the inheritance no longer felt like the most important thing happening in her life. Because another truth had become impossible to ignore. A truth standing only a few feet away. As sunset painted the hospital windows gold, Hannah found Lucas alone in the courtyard. For a moment, she simply watched him. The man she had overlooked countless times. The man who had sat in coffee shops just to see her walk past. The man who had quietly helped her when nobody was watching. The man she never noticed. Until one unexpected day changed everything. Lucas. He turned. Their eyes met. A smile appeared. "How's Rose?" "Recovering." Relief crossed his face immediately. The sight touched her heart. Because his concern was genuine. Always had been. Hannah took a deep breath. "There's something I need to ask." Lucas nodded. "What is it?" She stepped closer. "Why?" He looked confused. "Why what? Why did you help me all these years?" The question hung between them. Lucas looked down briefly. Then toward the evening sky. And finally back at her. His answer was simple. Painfully simple. "Because I noticed you." Those 4 words shattered every remaining wall around her heart. Not because they were dramatic. Because they were true. She remembered the scholarship. The hospital specialist. The opportunities. The support. The kindness. All given without expectation. All given before anyone knew the land was worth millions. All given before there was anything to gain. For the first time, Hannah truly understood. Lucas hadn't fallen in love with her future. He had fallen in love with the girl who gave away her lunch to a hungry stranger years ago. The girl who kept fighting when life became difficult. The girl who remained kind despite having every reason not to be. Tears filled her eyes. But this time they were different. Not tears of grief. Tears of being seen. All her life, Hannah had felt invisible. ignored, overlooked. Yet somehow, Lucas had seen her all along. A soft laugh escaped her. You know something? What? You sat in that coffee shop for 3 years. Lucas smiled. Every morning. And I never noticed. Not once. They both laughed. Then Hannah took another step closer. This time, neither looked away. I notice you now. For a moment, the world seemed to disappear. No inheritance. No secrets. No betrayals. Just two people finally standing in the same place after years of walking separate paths. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, Lucas realized something extraordinary. The day Hannah finally noticed him wasn't the day he became important to her. It was the day she discovered he had been there all along. And that was how a wealthy man who secretly loved a poor girl for 3 years finally found the courage to step out of the shadows. And how a poor girl who never noticed him finally saw the love that had been quietly waiting for her all along.